They told me it would be better, that I would be cared for, that I wouldn't have to worry about slipping on the bathroom floor, forgetting to take my medicine, or cooking another lonely dinner for one. They told me there would be community, warm food, soft blankets, smiling nurses, a life of ease and peace in my final chapters. And I believed them. Because when you're 83 and the stairs begin to feel like mountains, and the house that once held your children now echoes with silence, you start to wonder, maybe this is the right step. Maybe it's time. But the truth is, no one really prepares you for what it feels like to hand over your house key, and with it, pieces of your freedom, your routine, your voice. I'm not here to speak against every nursing home. I've met kind people behind these doors. I've seen caregivers who work themselves to the bone trying to do the right thing. But I'm also here to say this. There are things I wish I had known before I came here. Because the reality, the quiet truth behind the sterile white walls, is far more complex than I imagined. It's a reality that thousands of older adults across the country live with each day, often without ever speaking about it. In the next chapters, I want to walk you through my story. Not to frighten you, but to prepare you, to empower you, to help you ask the right questions before making a decision that could change your life forever. We'll talk about the quality of care, what happens when it's there and what happens when it's not. We'll dive into the silences, the ones caused not by lack of words, but by hearing loss, dementia, or simply not being listened to. You'll feel the weight of loneliness, even in a room full of people. You'll understand the fragility of medication routines, how one small error can spiral into something so much bigger. We'll explore the fight to stay on your feet, literally, and how the loss of movement can feel like a loss of identity. And finally, we'll talk about food, how the very act of nourishing your body can become a struggle between your needs and someone else's schedule. This isn't just my story. It's the story of millions of seniors who've traded comfort for care, only to find that sometimes they lose both. So if you're considering a nursing home, for yourself or someone you love, I hope you'll walk with me through these pages, because this might be the most important conversation we've never had. And it starts now. Chapter 1, Care Quality, where it all begins and often breaks. The first week, I still believed in the promise. The nurses were polite, the food was warm, even if a bit bland. There was a welcome basket on the nightstand with a small bar of soap and a flyer for bingo night. A cheerful woman named Janet came by and showed me where the dining hall was, how to call for help using the red button by the bed, and who to talk to if I needed anything. I nodded, I smiled, I even thought to myself, this might not be so bad. But then came the second week, and the third, and I began to see what most of us in here learn sooner or later, that the quality of care you receive depends less on what they promise and more on who's still standing when the promises wear thin. It starts small. You ring the call button for help going to the bathroom. 10 minutes go by, then 20. By the time someone shows up, you've already tried to do it yourself, and maybe you've fallen, or nearly, but you're embarrassed to say so because they'll write it down. Everything gets written down. The staff are tired. Some are kind, some are not. Many are overworked. They smile less as the weeks wear on. You start to recognize the haunted look in their eyes, the look of someone who wants to do the right thing, but simply can't keep up. They're understaffed. That's the first problem. Sometimes there are only 2 caregivers on the entire floor trying to help dozens of residents. If someone needs assistance eating, they get rushed. If someone needs help walking, they wait. If someone cries out in pain, there's no guarantee they'll be heard the first time. But it's not just the numbers. It's also the training, or the lack of it. I've seen caregivers who didn't know how to safely transfer someone from a wheelchair to a bed. I've seen them forget to wash their hands between visits. I've heard stories from other residents, stories that chill me even now. A bruise left unattended, medication given at the wrong time, someone shouting for help and being told to be patient. These aren't just mistakes. For people like us, fragile, aging, dependent, they can be life-altering. I remember one man, Mr. Ellison, a retired school principal, sharp mind, kind voice. He had diabetes and relied on insulin every day. One day, the medication didn't come on time. He waited, he rang the bell, he reminded them again and again. Until that night they found him unconscious. He survived, barely, but after that he was never quite the same. And yet when his daughter came to visit, he didn't tell her the full story. Neither did I when my family called. We smiled, we said we were doing okay, because who wants to burden the people you love with a truth that might make them feel helpless? The truth that sometimes the place we're sent to feel safe becomes the very place that puts us at risk. But here's the part I need you to hear. Not all nursing homes are like this. Some places have enough staff. Some invest in real training. Some treat their residents like human beings, not tasks to be completed. I've met caregivers who sing to us while helping us dress, who notice when we're quiet and ask gently, "Are you okay?" Who remember that we are not just patients, we are people. The problem is, you don't always know what kind of place you're walking into until the door closes behind you. That's why if you're considering this path, if you're thinking about moving into a nursing home or helping a loved one find care, ask questions. Ask too many questions. Ask how many staff are on each shift. Ask what the turnover rate is. Ask if the nurses know the residents' names, not just their medical charts. Ask how often residents are checked on, not just when there's a problem, but every day, just to say hello. And then, if you can, show up unannounced. Come on a Tuesday morning or a Saturday afternoon. See how things look when no one's expecting a tour. Because behind the fresh paint and the smiling administrator is a system that, if not built on compassion, diligence, and respect, will crumble when no one's watching. And we, the residents, are the ones who live in the rubble. I don't share this to make you afraid. I share it so you can be prepared. Because in the end, the quality of care isn't about facilities, it's about people. And when people are stretched too thin or given too little support, even the best intentions can't protect those of us who depend on them. Take it from someone who knows you only realize how much your life depends on others when you can no longer do everything for yourself. That's when the quality of care stops being a luxury and becomes your lifeline. Chapter 2. Communication barriers. When voices go unheard. It's one thing to feel helpless. It's another to feel unheard. When I first entered the nursing home, I didn't expect to feel invisible. But that's what started to happen. Not all at once, but little by little. Each time I spoke and no one truly listened. At first I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't loud enough, maybe I wasn't clear. My voice has grown softer over the years, and with my hearing not what it used to be, conversations sometimes felt like a puzzle I couldn't quite solve. But then I started to notice. I wasn't the only one. There was Mrs. Tran down the hall, whose first language was Vietnamese. She tried to explain to the staff that her medication was making her sick. They nodded and smiled, but they didn't understand. And instead of finding someone who could, they simply gave her the same pills again the next day. I saw her cry afterward, quietly, to herself. There was Mr. Harold, who used to teach English literature. After his stroke, he struggled to find the right words. His mind was still sharp, but the words came out tangled. I watched him try to explain what he wanted for lunch, his hand trembling, his mouth forming half sentences, and the nurse simply sighed and said, "Never mind, we'll just bring you what we have." And then there was me. I tried to tell the night aide that the buzzing sound from the hallway light was keeping me up. I asked 3 times. Each time she nodded, smiled, and walked away. It never got fixed. Eventually, I stopped asking. That's the most dangerous thing about communication barriers. They don't just silence your voice, they train you to stop using it. And when you stop speaking up, people assume you're fine. The truth is, many of us in here have things to say, fears, needs, pain, opinions. But too often, those things get lost in translation, between accents, between hearing aids that don't work, between memory lapses and tired staff who don't have the patience to wait for the words to come. It's not always anyone's fault, but it's always someone's cost. Because when communication breaks down, dignity breaks with it. I once watched a staff member try to help a resident get dressed without asking what she wanted to wear. The woman kept pointing to her blue sweater. The aide pulled out a red one. "This one's warmer," she said. The woman shook her head. She reached for the blue. The aide sighed and dressed her in the red one anyway. It was a small moment, But I could see it in the woman's eyes, that silent surrender, that feeling of being dismissed, overruled, unseen. You might think, it's just a sweater. But to her, it was a choice, a piece of herself. And when choices are stripped away, one by one, what's left of a person's identity? Here's what I've learned. Communication isn't just about speaking. It's about being heard. It's about someone taking the time to look you in the eyes, to wait for your answer, to listen with the kind of patience that says, I see you, you matter. Technology can help. Some residents here use voice amplifiers. Others have tablets with video call features, where they can type or show pictures when words fail. I've even seen staff use translation apps to bridge language gaps, and hearing devices that help more than the outdated ones some of us wear. But tools mean nothing without intention, without compassion, without a culture that believes every voice deserves time and space to be heard, no matter how long it takes or how softly it's spoken. To those considering a nursing home, either for yourself or for someone you love, ask this. How does the staff communicate? Do they listen or do they just nod? Do they have resources for residents who speak other languages? Do they know how to support people with hearing loss or cognitive issues? Do they rush conversations or do they sit down and truly connect? Because the answer to those questions will shape everything else. If someone can't communicate their pain, they won't get the right care. If someone can't express their preferences, they'll lose control over their lives. If someone can't share their fears, they'll carry them alone. And if you think being alone in a room is hard, try being alone in your thoughts, with no one who will truly listen. I don't want pity, none of us do. We want to be heard, to be understood, to be treated not like problems to manage, but like people with stories, needs, and voices. Voices that matter, even if they sometimes stutter or fade. So listen a little longer. Wait a little more patiently. Because sometimes the greatest gift you can give another human being is not your help, it's your ears. Chapter 3, Loneliness and Social Isolation, the Quiet Pain. I've lived long enough to understand that silence can take many forms. There's the peaceful kind, the quiet of a morning sun slipping through the curtains, or the soft hush of a page turning in a well-loved book. But then there's the other kind of silence. The kind that presses against your chest at night when no one calls. The kind that fills the empty space at the dinner table where your family used to sit. The kind that settles in after your last visitor says goodbye and doesn't come back for weeks. That's the silence that lives here. People talk about the loneliness of old age, but they don't understand it until they've felt it, until they've sat in a room full of people and still felt completely unseen. When I first moved into the nursing home, I expected some changes, less independence, fewer choices, but I didn't expect the deep ache of invisibility. At first, there were visits, cards, calls, my daughter brought the grandkids, my sister called every Sunday, neighbors sent cookies. But slowly, life outside the walls kept moving. People got busy, schedules filled up, promises faded. And one by one, the connections I counted on started slipping through my fingers like sand. I told myself it was temporary, but weeks turned into months, and I began to realize they weren't coming back the way they used to. I wasn't angry, just quietly heartbroken. The hardest part wasn't the silence itself, it was what the silence whispered to me: you've been left behind. You'd think being in a place surrounded by people would protect you from loneliness, but it doesn't. There are plenty of residents here, some chatty, some kind, but we're all on our own islands, trying to hold on to a version of ourselves that the world seems to have forgotten. We talk about the weather, the food, the TV shows we half watch. But the conversations we crave, the ones where someone looks into our eyes and says, "Tell me your story," those are rare. I remember Edna, a woman who lived 3 rooms down from me. She was a former opera singer, had performed in Paris, in Vienna, even in New York. But you'd never know it. She spent her days staring out the window, humming quietly to herself. One day I asked her, "Why don't you sing anymore?" She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "Who would listen?" That answer crushed me, because that's what loneliness does. It doesn't just isolate you, it convinces you you're not worth connecting with. I've seen people fade before my eyes, not because of illness, but because their hearts were starving for something no pill could fix: human connection. We were built to belong, to be touched, talked to, remembered. So when those things vanish, something inside us starts to wither. But it doesn't have to be that way. I remember the day a new activities director arrived. Her name was Maria. Young, bright-eyed, and full of energy we hadn't seen in months. She walked in with a smile and said, "We're not letting anyone fade away here." She started small, a tea circle every Thursday, music afternoons where residents could request their favorite songs, a wall where we could pin up pictures of our younger selves, back when we were dancers, carpenters, teachers, mothers. She gave us back our stories. And more than that, she gave us back to each other. For the first time in a long time, I saw George laughing again. I heard Edna humming louder. I even joined a book club, something I hadn't done since I was in my 60s. The loneliness didn't disappear, but it softened. Because now there were names to call, smiles to return, eyes that looked back and saw me. Here's the truth. Loneliness is not just about being alone. It's about being unseen. And for those of us living in nursing homes, that invisibility can become the most painful part of aging. So, if you're thinking about placing someone you love in a facility, or if you're facing the decision for yourself, don't just ask about care or cleanliness or medication schedules. Ask this: will I still feel like I matter here? Will someone talk to me because they want to, not because they have to? Because being cared for is not the same as being cared about. And if you want to protect your heart, if you want to keep your soul alive, you must surround yourself with people who don't just see you, but who help you remember who you are. Chapter 4. Medication Management. When mistakes become dangerous. I've taken pills every day for over 20 years. At first, it was just one or two. A blood pressure tablet, something for the joints, easy enough to remember. But as the years passed, my little plastic pill box turned into a drawer, then a tray, then a whole section of my daily routine that I could no longer manage without help. When I moved into the nursing home, I thought, finally, someone else will handle this. No more forgetting dosages, no more triple-checking the tiny labels through foggy glasses, just peace of mind. But that peace didn't last long. I'll never forget the morning they gave me the wrong pill. It was subtle at first, a wave of dizziness, then a pounding heart, cold sweat, and before I could press the call button, I was on the floor. Turned out I'd been given someone else's medication, one meant for a man in the room next to mine, a medication for heart arrhythmia, when all I needed was a vitamin supplement. The nurse apologized, of course, said it was a mix-up. It happens. But I remember lying in bed afterward, hands trembling, thinking, if it had been a different pill, could I have died? And that was just one incident. I heard other stories. Too many. Someone missed a dose of insulin. Another was given a double dose of blood thinner. One woman didn't get her antidepressants for 3 days and slipped into a deep, frightening silence. You see, in a place like this, medication is not just a routine. It's survival. But it's also fragile and often treated like an assembly line process. Pills are dispensed from little cups, handed out from a cart that rolls down the hall like clockwork. Except we're not clockwork. We're people with complex histories, allergies, interactions, shifts in mood, days when our bodies feel different than they did yesterday. But the system doesn't account for those days. The system follows a chart. And the staff? Most are kind. Many are overwhelmed, short on time, juggling dozens of patients, all with different needs, all with different meds. So when mistakes happen, it's not always about carelessness, it's about exhaustion. Still, the consequences are the same. After my fall, I began to fear my own medicine. Every time they handed me a pill, I double-checked the name, the color, the shape. I started asking questions. What's this one for? Why now? Are you sure this is mine? Some staff were patient with me, others were not. I was labeled as difficult. But I wasn't trying to be difficult, I was trying to stay alive. It's hard to explain the helplessness of putting your health in someone else's hands and watching those hands fumble. I missed being in control. At home, I had a system. I knew my body. I could feel when something was off. But here, if something didn't feel right, I had to wait, explain it, hope someone understood, hope someone acted quickly enough. The scariest part? Many residents here can't advocate for themselves. Their minds have grown foggy. Their hands shake too much to open a pill bottle, let alone question what's inside. They trust the system blindly, and sometimes that trust is betrayed. That's why I started keeping a journal, writing down every pill, every side effect, every time something felt off. Not because I'm obsessive, but because I realized no one else was keeping track as closely as I was. And I started helping others too, quietly, kindly, asking the woman across the hall, "Did they give you your arthritis pill this morning?" Helping George read his prescription label after his eyes gave out. We became each other's safety net. Because in a place where systems fail, sometimes the only protection you have is your neighbor and your own voice. If you're reading this and thinking about moving into a nursing home or helping a loved one transition, please, don't assume medication is handled perfectly. Ask questions, set up a log, make sure staff are trained, and not just in the beginning, but regularly. Encourage regular reviews with actual doctors, not just staff nurses. Use technology, those EMR systems they talk about, push for them, they save lives. Because the truth is, one little pill can make the difference between a day filled with strength and clarity or a trip to the emergency room. And when your life becomes a string of pills, you have to make sure that string never slips through someone else's fingers. Chapter 5, Mobility and Independence, the fight to keep moving. There was a time when I could walk 5 blocks to the bakery, rain or shine. The lady behind the counter knew my name. I always ordered the same thing, 2 warm rolls and a coffee, no sugar. It wasn't just the bread I craved, it was the freedom. The morning air, the stretch in my legs, the rhythm of footsteps on pavement, the feeling that I still belonged out in the world. I didn't know how precious that walk was until the day I could no longer make it. When I first came to the nursing home, I still had some spring in my step. Not a lot, but enough. I could get from my room to the dining hall. I could take a short walk in the garden. I even thought, maybe I'll get stronger here with more support. But what happened instead was the opposite. At home, I moved constantly. I had stairs, dishes to wash, a garden to tend. I had reason to stand, to bend, to reach. Here, I had a call button. Need a cup of water? Press the button. Want to close the window? Press the button. Dropped something? Wait for help. At first I resisted. I still tried to do things myself. I walked the halls every afternoon, slow and steady. I insisted on dressing myself, even when it took twice as long. But eventually, inevitably, people started stopping me. Don't strain yourself. Let us help you. Why not just rest today? They meant well, I know that, but with every well-meaning offer, my independence chipped away like waves softening a stone. And then came the walker, then the wheelchair, then the day I couldn't stand up without someone lifting me. It doesn't happen all at once. That's what makes it so cruel. You lose your strength quietly, gradually, like sand slipping through your fingers. And one day, you're sitting by the window, staring outside, and you realize it's been weeks since your feet touched the sidewalk. I remember watching a volunteer bring in therapy dogs. Everyone smiled, laughed, reached out with hands that shook more than they used to. But all I could think was, I used to walk my own dog. Every morning, every night. I haven't done that in over a year. And I hated that feeling, that aching nostalgia for a body that could do things. Mobility is more than movement. It's dignity. It's independence. It's being able to say, I'll meet you there, instead of, can someone take me? But in the nursing home, the message is often, don't try. Don't risk it. Let us handle it. And yes, sometimes that's necessary. Safety matters, falls are real, but so is the risk of giving up too soon. I've seen what happens when people stop fighting to move. Their muscles weaken, their spirits dim, they stay in bed longer, they eat less, and slowly they start to vanish, not just from the hallways, but from themselves. That's why even now, even with a cane and a shaky gait, I force myself to move, to stand, to stretch, to take the long way to the dining room. Because if I stop trying, I may never start again. There's a man here named Robert. He's 89. He has a spinal issue that makes walking painful, but every morning he rolls his wheelchair to the therapy room and asks for the same thing. Help me stand. Even if it's just for a minute, even if it hurts. I don't want to forget how, he told me once. Neither do I. That's why I asked my daughter to bring resistance bands from home, why I do ankle rolls in bed and shoulder stretches in the chair, why I practice standing without using my arms. Because I've learned something most people don't realize until it's too late. Mobility is a use it or lose it game. If you're thinking about moving into a nursing home, or if you already live in one, ask yourself, what am I doing to keep moving today? Don't wait for physical therapy appointments. Make movement part of your daily fight for freedom. If you can stand, stand. If you can walk, walk. If you can dance, even in your chair, do it. Because the minute you stop believing your body is still yours, it starts believing that too. And when we move even just a little, we remember. We are still here. We still matter. We still go forward, step by step. Chapter 6. Nutritional concerns, the silent struggle at mealtimes. If you've never had to choose between eating what's on your plate or eating nothing at all, then you might not understand how heartbreaking meals can become in a nursing home. Most people think food is the least of our worries here. They imagine us sitting together at tidy tables, sipping soup, smiling with other residents, sharing stories over meatloaf and mashed potatoes. But behind the clinking of cutlery and polite chatter, there's another reality, a quieter one. It's the sound of someone pushing away their plate because the texture is too hard to chew. It's the silence of a resident who once loved food, now staring blankly, their appetite long gone. It's the frustration of a woman who used to cook 5-course dinners, being served mystery meat on a tray she didn't ask for. Mealtime used to be one of the greatest joys of my day. At home, I had my rituals. Morning toast with cinnamon and honey, fresh berries in a bowl by the window, a cup of tea in a mug I picked up on a trip to the mountains. Food had meaning. It carried memories, smells of holidays, sounds of sizzling garlic, that warm, full feeling in your chest when a loved one asks for seconds. But in here, meals are often just boxes to check, calories to count, something to fill the stomach, not the soul. At first, I thought I was just being picky. The fish was too dry, the soup too bland, the portions too small one day and overwhelming the next. But then I started noticing more. Elaine, who used to eat with a smile, began refusing meals. Mr. Jackson, who always asked for extra fruit, now left his untouched. And Maria, sweet strong Maria, lost 15 pounds in just 2 months. It wasn't just about food anymore. It was about dignity, choice, nourishment that respects who we are, not just how old we are. I began to ask questions. Why did so many residents have trouble chewing? Turns out, some had dental issues that weren't being addressed. Why was the food always the same 5 options? Because budgets were tight and cooking from scratch took too long. Why weren't diets adjusted for those with diabetes, high blood pressure, or food sensitivities? They were supposed to be, but mistakes happened. Too often, it's not just about hunger, it's about health. Nutrition in older adults affects everything: our energy, immune systems, bone strength, even our moods. A missed meal isn't just a missed moment of pleasure, it's a missed opportunity to keep fighting another day. I've seen it up close. One of my dearest friends here, Thomas, started skipping breakfast. Said he just wasn't hungry, but his color faded, his balance worsened, his memory grew foggy. When we finally convinced him to see the on-site nurse, she discovered his sodium and potassium levels were dangerously low. He was malnourished, not because of lack of food, but because the food he was getting didn't fit his needs. That's when I realized we need to advocate for ourselves, because if we don't, no one will. So I started speaking up. I asked for fresh fruit instead of canned. I requested softer vegetables, more soups, fewer processed items. I suggested meal feedback forms. At first, the staff was surprised, some dismissed it, but a few, bless them, listened. They added avocado toast to breakfast, began offering herbal teas. They even let us vote on the weekly special. Little things, but powerful things, and slowly mealtimes changed. Not dramatically, not perfectly, but meaningfully. We began sharing recipes from our past, talking about our favorite meals, telling stories, like how Sylvia's lemon bars won every church bake-off in 1973, or how Henry used to sneak cinnamon into his wife's chili when she wasn't looking. The dining table stopped being a place of silence and compromise. It became a place of life again. That's the thing about food. It's never just food. It's comfort, connection, control. And for people who've had so much taken away, a simple bowl of soup, flavored the way we like, can feel like a revolution. So if you're considering a nursing home for yourself or someone you love, ask about the food. Not just the menu, but the philosophy. Do they involve residents in planning? Do they honor cultural preferences? Do they offer fresh, whole ingredients? Because the truth is, nourishment is more than nutrition. It's respect, it's care, it's a chance 3 times a day to remind us that we still deserve to be seen, heard, and fed in all the ways that matter. And for those of us still sitting at these tables, fork in hand, memories in our hearts, that's not a small thing. It's everything. Epilogue, a life worth holding on to. As I sit by the window, watching the afternoon light stretch across the garden outside, I realize something. The story I've shared, it's not just about me. It's about every man or woman who once built a home with their bare hands, who raised families, ran businesses, survived wars, heartbreaks, and triumphs. It's about the people who spent decades taking care of others only to find themselves suddenly needing care. And it's about choices. Hard choices. Some days, I wish I had asked more questions before I gave up my home. I wish someone had told me to look deeper into the care quality, to listen closely to how people communicated, to notice the quiet loneliness behind the painted walls and activity schedules. I wish I had understood how my mobility, my health, even the food I ate, would slowly be managed by someone else's hands. But more than anything, I wish I had known that the most important thing we must fight to protect isn't our comfort. It's our dignity. The truth is, growing old isn't something to fear. What's truly frightening is forgetting that even in old age, we are still whole human beings, with stories, with preferences, with voices that deserve to be heard. If you are reading this and you are over 60, I want you to know your life still belongs to you. You still have the right to ask for care that honors your needs. You still deserve food that nourishes both your body and spirit. You still deserve privacy, movement, companionship, and joy. And above all, you still deserve to be seen, not as a patient, not as a burden, but as a person. So take these 6 lessons about care quality, communication, loneliness, medication, independence, and nutrition, and carry them with you, not as warnings, but as wisdom. The kind of wisdom that makes you pause before making life-altering decisions. The kind of wisdom that gives your children the clarity to ask better questions. The kind that allows you to plan a future that's not just safe, but meaningful. Maybe you'll never need a nursing home. Maybe one day you will. But if that day comes, I hope you walk in with your eyes open, your voice strong, and your heart full of memories too precious to be lost. Because growing older is not the end. It's the beginning of a new kind of strength. One that comes not from youth or muscle, but from knowing who you are, what matters most, and how deeply your life still matters. So here's to you, to your story, to your fight, to your freedom. May you never stop seeking the care, respect, and love you deserve.